So Joe Biden gave a speech in the wake of the killing of George Floyd, and he instantly shoved his foot in his mouth. Watch this.
Because we also have to fundamentally change the way in which police are trained. Police are trained much more. And by the way, there are a lot of people, overwhelmingly it's African Americans who've been victimized, shot, and there's a lot of other people who shot and killed in the Hispanic community and the white community. And the idea that instead of standing there and teaching a cop when there's an unarmed person coming at him with a knife or something to shoot him in the leg instead of in the heart is a very different thing. There's a lot of different things that can change.
Okay, let me explain why this is a terrible thing to say. George Floyd didn't do anything wrong. He wasn't a threat to the cops at all. So why are we having a conversation about what the cops should do if there's a genuine threat against them? I don't know why we're having that conversation at the moment, because there was no threat against them. The real conversation we should be having is, what do we do about wanton, over-the-top police violence? That's the conversation we should be having. How do we hold police accountable when they do something wrong? That's the conversation we should be having, and I will always bring up on this show, in the context of these stories, Campaign Zero, because I think Campaign Zero absolutely nailed it when it comes to the solutions that they're calling for. I've gone through them a million times on the show, but just to give a few, you have like civilian review boards that are above the cops. They get to evaluate their actions, body cameras on all cops, no exceptions, under penalty of law, special prosecutors. Like, there are very clear-cut things you could do in order to fix the issue of police brutality. Joe, that's the conversation that we need to be having. Now, listen, now I'll say something that might be slightly controversial, but here goes. In a situation where there's somebody who's a genuine threat to an officer, does it make sense to shoot them in the leg instead of killing them and shooting them in the heart or the head or whatever? Yes. Yes. So it's not that, I don't think that what he's saying is necessarily wrong. I just think he's having the wrong conversation, and to have the conversation about the legitimate use of police force in this moment obfuscates the issue that we're having right now, which is, that's not the conversation. The conversation is, what do you do when there's wanton police violence and there's no accountability and they're the thugs and they're the criminals? What do you do in those instances? What do you have to say about that issue, Joe? And see, that's the point. The point is, I think like an old school kind of Democrat, a neoliberal corporatist, a status quo defender, they're unable to even admit that there are instances of cops flat out being the bad guy. When you put your knee on somebody's neck and you do it for 9 minutes as he screams, "I can't breathe," there's no ambiguity in that. There's no up in the air question. The conversation isn't, let's talk about legitimate police use of violence. That is an illegitimate use of violence. So talk about police illegitimately using force. That's the conversation, Joe. But on that, he's probably totally gone and doesn't have any solutions. So, you know, it's so tone deaf to the moment. And it's so, you know, it's like what we see with Joe on economic issues. It's like you have, or healthcare issues. You have this healthcare crisis, and he's like, you know, we really should expand Obamacare. 43 million people, up to that many people, are losing their health insurance because they're losing their jobs. Expanding Obamacare ain't gonna cut it, dog. You need Medicare for all. But that's what it's like. It's just a total lack of understanding the gravity and the weight of the situation. And it's pathetic to see. But here we are.